What if what you perceive as reality right now is actually just a deeply ingrained dream?
Hmm.
And even crazier, what if we are dreaming even when our eyes are wide open, navigating the world?
It's a wild thought, isn't it?
It really is. It's a perspective that flips everything we think we know on its head.
It absolutely does.
Like,
And that's the fascinating premise we're going to explore in this deep dive. We're pulling from some incredible ancient
all
wisdom
right.
that suggests our waking life
Hmm.
is precisely that, a particular kind of dream.
Exactly. So, this deep dive is built on the sources you've shared, specifically diving into the wisdom of the Toltec,
Hmm.
these ancient scientists and artists from southern Mexico. And our focus is the powerful teachings laid out by the teacher in this lineage, known as a Nagual, Don Miguel Ruiz, in his book, The Four Agreements.
And our mission, really, is to get to the heart of what these sources are saying,
Hmm.
to unpack this idea of the dream,
Yeah.
how we become so immersed in it, and, well, most importantly, how this ancient wisdom offers a tangible path to transform that dream.
And find freedom and happiness.
Exactly. And we're sticking strictly to the insights presented in the material you provided. No going off script here.
Good. Okay, so to kick us off, the introduction in the source material starts with this really powerful metaphor, the story of the smoky mirror.
Ah,
Tell us
yes.
about that because it feels like it sets the stage for this entire concept of the dream.
It really does. It's a foundational image. So the story is about a human who experiences this profound realization while meditating.
Okay.
He sees that everything, including himself, is made of light, pure light. He understands that matter, physical stuff, is like a mirror reflecting this light.
Right, reflecting the light.
But then he perceives something else, a kind of smoke or maybe a fog moving between all the mirrors.
Hmm.
And this smoke, it prevents the mirrors from reflecting each other clearly. It stops people from seeing what they truly are,
Which is.
which he realizes is pure light, pure love.
So the smoke is the illusion, the distortion that gets in the way. And he called himself the smoky mirror to remember this sort of dichotomy, right? That he was light, but also saw the world through this smoky illusion.
Exactly. And this smoke, this world of illusion, that's what the sources refer to as the dream.
Okay.
And that dream is what we're going to explore, how it's formed, how we interact with it, how it shapes us.
Okay, let's dive into how this dream takes hold then. The sources talk about domestication and the dream of the planet. What's the core idea here?
Well, the core idea, right, is that there's this massive collective dream of the planet.
Collective dream.
Think of it as the combined dream of billions of people all interacting, all sort of agreeing on what reality is.
Okay.
This encompasses everything society has built over millennia.
Hmm.
Its rules, beliefs, laws, religions, cultures, governments, concepts of time, money, literally everything.
It's like this huge, incredibly complex, pre-existing structure of agreements we're just born into.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
And we are born into this structure. We're not born knowing the rules of this particular dream, but we have the capacity to learn how to dream.
We have the hardware, but not the software yet.
Kind of, yeah. We're born with that raw ability, attention, and intent. And society, starting with our parents, immediately begins the process of teaching us its specific dream.
And this is the domestication.
That's the term they use, domestication.
Domestication.
Yeah.
Like training an animal. The sources are pretty direct about that comparison, aren't they?
They are, yeah. It's described as adults, parents, teachers, authority figures using our attention.
Which is our ability to focus and learn.
Right. Using that attention to essentially program us.
Mm-hmm.
Through repetition, constant repetition, they introduce rules and information into our minds.
And this is how we learn language.
Which is the code, the operating system of this collective dream.
And what's acceptable behavior, what's good or bad, right or wrong, beautiful or ugly, but only within this specific dream.
Precisely. It's all relative to the dream we're taught.
And the method they use, the sources say, is this system of punishment and reward.
Classic conditioning. You follow the rules, you get approval, attention, that's the reward.
Yeah.
You break the rules, you get disapproval, punishment.
And this system works because it creates fear, deep-seated fear.
Right. We become afraid of punishment, obviously, but maybe even more so. We become afraid of not getting the reward.
The attention, the approval.
The feeling of being good enough. That becomes the driving force.
So what's the outcome of this fear-based training? Where does it lead?
Well, we start performing. We learn to put on a show, We start pretending to be something we're not.
Just to please others.
Just to please others, exactly. To avoid that fear of rejection. We essentially download and become copies of our parents' belief systems, society's beliefs, religious beliefs.
And our natural tendencies, the parts of us that don't quite fit.
Our natural, maybe wilder tendencies, the part of us that might not fit neatly into the collective dream, they get suppressed or sort of lost in this process, pushed down.
And then, the domestication becomes self-sustaining. We internalize it.
That's the next step. Auto-domestication, the source calls it.
Auto-domestication.
Yeah. We've been so thoroughly trained, you see, that we no longer need external authorities like parents or teachers to enforce the rules.
We become our own taskmaster.
Bingo. We punish ourselves when we perceive we've broken a rule, and we reward ourselves maybe when we follow them.
It sounds like having this internal rule book constantly operating inside our own head.
That's precisely how the source describes it, a book of law, right there in our mind.
Wow.
This internalized belief system, it dictates our personal dream. We accept whatever's in that book as absolute truth, often without ever questioning it.
Even if it goes against who we really are.
Especially then. All of our judgments about ourselves and others, they're based on this internal law, even when it contradicts our deepest inner nature.
And the sources highlight two key roles, or maybe archetypes, we develop within this internal legal system.
Yes, the judge and the victim.
Okay, tell us about those.
So the judge uses the book of law to scrutinize everything we do, everything we think, everything we feel. It's constantly looking for infractions.
And when it finds one.
It finds us guilty. It declares we deserve punishment.
Ouch. And the victim?
The victim is the part of us that receives this sentence. He carries the blame, the guilt, the shame. It's that voice inside that says, poor me, I'm not good enough, I'm stupid, I'm unworthy.
And the judge just keeps validating that, reinforcing the whole cycle.
It's a vicious cycle, yeah. And what's particularly poignant, I think, is the point the source makes about the injustice of this system.
How so?
Well, think about it. Unlike other animals who might learn from a mistake and just move on, we human beings,
Yeah.
we make ourselves pay for the same mistake thousands of times.
Oh, yeah. Rerunning it in our heads.
Constantly. We remember something we did years ago. The judge finds us guilty again. The victim feels the guilt again. We punish ourselves again. It's this constant, repetitive cycle of suffering.
And we do it to others too, right? Making them pay repeatedly for past mistakes.
We often do. We inflict the same kind of injustice externally.
And the sources make a pretty bold, almost shocking statement about the content of this internal book of law.
They do. It says that as much as 95% of the beliefs stored in our minds are simply lies. Not misunderstandings, but lies.
95%.
And we suffer because we believe these lies are the truth.
So if our internal system is built on lies and self-punishment, and the collective dream, the dream of the planet, is built on fear, this sounds pretty grim.
It does sound grim. The sources don't sugarcoat it at all. They explicitly compare this dream of the planet to the traditional description of hell.
Hell, really?
Yes, a dream of violence, fear, war, injustice, punishment, pain, and suffering. The fire in this hell, they say, is the negative emotions generated by fear. Anger, jealousy, envy, hate.
Wow.
But the powerful nugget here, the real kicker, is the idea that we are already living in a dream of hell. It's not some future destination we might go to.
It's a state of mind, a state we are in right now.
Exactly. It's the state of the human mind as it currently operates under these agreements. And the sources add that others can push us into a deeper hell, but only if we internalize their actions, if we take it personally and allow it.
Which we'll get to. But our own minds aren't exactly peaceful either, even without external input. The sources describe the mind as being like a fog.
The mitote, that's a specific Toltec term used in the source.
Matote. What does that translate to, roughly?
It means something like chaos, or like a noisy marketplace, a cacophony. It's the state of the human mind with maybe 1,000 conflicting voices.
Oh, I know that feeling.
Beliefs and thoughts, all vying for attention, creating just immense confusion. And this mitote, this fog, it prevents us from seeing clearly.
Seeing what?
Seeing what we truly are, which the source says is pure light and love. And crucially, seeing that we are not free. We're trapped in this fog.
Because the sources suggest our biggest fear isn't even death itself, which is surprising.
No, it was not death. The biggest fear, according to this wisdom, is taking the risk to be alive. Fully alive.
The risk to truly be ourselves.
Yes. The risk to express who we really are without reservation, without the masks. We've been so conditioned to please others, driven by that fear of not being accepted or not being good enough.
Right.
That the idea of simply being authentic, truly authentic, feels utterly terrifying.
And this fear of not being good enough, it leads us to construct some kind of impossible standard for ourselves.
Yes, exactly. We create this image of perfection, this idea of how we should be to gain acceptance, particularly from those we love or society in general.
But it's unattainable, right, by definition.
It's completely unattainable because it's not real. It's an artificial construct. And inevitably, we fail to meet this artificial standard.
And that leads directly to self-rejection.
Directly. We judge ourselves relentlessly for not being this perfect image, and we find it impossible to forgive ourselves for falling short.
Which then forces us to wear social masks, pretending, feeling false, and, well, probably frustrated deep down.
Deeply frustrated. And then, tragically, we project this whole mechanism onto others. We judge them based on the same impossible image of perfection we hold for ourselves.
And of course, they inevitably fall short of our expectations, too.
Every time. Which just creates more conflict and disappointment.
So this entire system, the judge, the victim, the book of law, the fear, the image of perfection, it culminates in what sounds like constant internal warfare, self-abuse.
The sources are very clear and quite confronting about this. No one abuses us more severely or more consistently than we abuse ourselves. We use the judge, the victim, and the belief system as our weapons.
Wow.
And here's a really key insight. Our tolerance for external abuse from others. It's a direct mirror of how much we abuse ourselves.
Tell me more about that.
Well, if someone abuses us, say, less than we abuse ourselves, we might tolerate it, maybe even find it normal. If they abuse us more than our own internal standard, we might finally react or leave.
But if we abuse ourselves really severely,
Then we might tolerate truly terrible external abuse. Because on some level, that victim part believes we deserve it. It feels familiar. We think we aren't worthy of anything better.
that's heavy. It's this whole cycle of fear, lies, and self-rejection that we're trapped in. And all our energy, our personal power, as the source calls it, it's all tied up in just maintaining this dysfunctional system.
That's the profound cost.
Yeah.
All the power we have, all our creative life force, is spent creating and upholding these old fear-based agreements.
Which leaves us feeling powerless to change anything.
Exactly. Even the smallest habit or belief feels impossible to shift because all our energy is already allocated. And the source delivers the critical takeaway right here.
Yeah.
If you want to change the dream, your personal dream,
Yeah.
you must change the agreements that create it. That's the only way.
Okay. So how do we even begin? How do we start to dismantle these deeply ingrained fear-based agreements that are creating our personal dream of hell?
Well, this brings us right to the heart of the wisdom presented in the source.
The 4 agreements.
The 4 agreements. These aren't just, nice suggestions. They are presented as incredibly powerful tools, like swords, the source says, that can help you break those old agreements and reclaim your personal power.
Okay.
The sources emphasize that adopting them, really living them, requires strong will and consistent repetition. It's not easy,
Right.
but they offer the potential, the real potential, to transform your life from that dream of hell into a personal heaven, your own heaven on earth.
Okay, let's unpack the first one then. What is it?
The first agreement. Be impeccable with your word.
Be impeccable with your word.
The source calls this the most important agreement and potentially the most difficult one to master,
I can believe that.
but also the one that, even on its own, can elevate you towards living in that state of heaven on earth.
Wow. Why is the word given such immense power in this particular wisdom tradition?
Because according to the source, the word is the power we have to create. It's described as a gift, maybe from God or the Creator. It's a fundamental force. Through our word, we express our intent, our energy, and we manifest everything we dream, everything we feel, and ultimately everything we are. It's the tool by which we shape our reality, our personal dream.
And like any powerful tool, I guess, it can be used destructively or constructively.
Exactly. It has 2 edges, like a sword. One edge is the misuse of the word, which the source describes as black magic.
Black magic, that sounds intense.
It is. This is using the word to spread fear, doubt, blame, gossip, poison, destruction. The sources even give the example of someone like Hitler, using his word to manipulate and create immense destruction.
Okay, so that's the misuse. What's the other edge?
The other edge is the impeccability of the word, and that's white magic.
White magic.
Using the word impeccably means using it consciously to create beauty, love, truth, healing, to build connection. The word has the power to enslave you further in the dream of hell, or it has the power to set you absolutely free.
And we cast these spells on each other constantly, don't we? Often without even realizing the impact.
Oh, all the time. Think about the thoughtless comments we make every day. You tell a friend, oh, you look kind of sick today. Or maybe telling a child, you have such an ugly singing voice.
Oof.
These are like seeds, like little spells. If the person who hears it believes it, if they make an agreement with that negative word, that lie, it can profoundly impact their entire life.
The source tells that story about the little girl who loved to sing?
Yes, the little girl who stopped singing completely after her mother, probably meaning well, made a careless comment about her voice. It's a tragic illustration of how easily we cast these negative spells, often unintentionally, especially onto those we love the most.
So what does impeccable truly mean in this context? It sounds like perfection, which feels impossible.
Well, the source breaks down the word itself. Impeccable comes from Latin roots. Peccatus meaning sin, and meaning without, so literally without sin.
Okay, but what is sin here?
Crucially, it redefines sin. Sin isn't some external judgment from a deity. Sin is anything that goes against yourself.
Against yourself.
Yes, judging yourself is a sin, blaming yourself is a sin. And the biggest sin, the source says, is self-rejection. That's described as a mortal sin because it effectively kills off parts of who you truly are.
Wow.
So impeccability is the opposite. It's not going against yourself. It means taking responsibility for your actions, yes, but without judgment or blame. It means directing your energy, your word, towards truth and love for yourself.
So using your word against others, insulting them, gossiping, sending what the source calls emotional poison, that's ultimately using it against yourself because of how energy works, like a ripple effect.
Precisely. The energy you send out returns to you. It's like karma in action through the word. If you send insult, you'll likely attract or receive insult back. If you use your word with love and truth, it generates love.
Makes sense.
Being impeccable means consciously directing your energy towards truth and love, starting with how you use your word about yourself and then extending outward.
And gossip is singled out as particularly nasty, a potent form of black magic.
It really is. It's compared to a computer virus for the mind.
A computer virus? How so?
It spreads emotional poison very quickly. It clogs up the mind with conflicting messages. It fuels that internal chaos, the mitote,
Right.
and it completely warps perception. The example given is hearing negative gossip about a teacher before you've even met them.
Yeah.
That poison can totally influence your judgment, maybe even lead you to make decisions like dropping a class, all based on a lie you agreed with.
And of course, we are often our own worst gossips, aren't we? The way we talk to ourselves.
Oh, absolutely. Using the word against ourselves with that constant stream of self-criticism. I'm not good enough. I made a mistake. I'm so stupid. I look terrible today.
Yeah, that internal judge is relentless.
But the first agreement provides a powerful counterspell to all of this. By committing to be impeccable with your word, you begin to purify that emotional poison, both the poison you might send out and the poison you might receive or generate internally.
So improves relationships.
Fundamentally. And perhaps most importantly, it starts to give you immunity to the negative spells coming from others.
Immunity, how?
Your mind becomes less fertile ground for lies and fear-based words. It becomes more receptive, more fertile for words of love and truth. The black magic just doesn't stick as easily.
And there's a simple way to kind of gauge your progress with this agreement, right?
Yes, the source offers a clear metric. You measure your impeccability with your word by your level of self-love.
They're directly correlated.
Directly. The more impeccable you are with your word, especially towards yourself, the higher your self-love. The more you love yourself, the more impeccable you become naturally.
So the very act of being impeccable with your word is an act of self-love. Using your word to tell yourself how wonderful you are, how capable you are,
Yeah.
breaking those old agreements of self-criticism.
It's white magic directed inward first, and then it radiates outward. It's about consciously choosing to use this incredibly powerful creative force, the word for healing, for love, for truth, rather than letting it run wild, creating fear and destruction.
That's powerful.
The sources are quite hopeful here. They say, look, if others have achieved this state of grace, you can too. Because the power of the word is inherent in all of us. Mastering this one agreement, they claim, is potentially the key to transcending that whole dream of hell.
That's a really profound shift possible with just the first agreement. Incredible.
Yeah.
What's the second powerful tool the sources describe?
The second agreement, don't take anything personal.
Don't take anything personal.
And this is described as flowing directly from the power gained by practicing the first agreement.
The core idea here feels incredibly liberating, doesn't it? This idea that nothing, absolutely nothing others do is because of you. It's always about them.
It is liberating, yeah. Everyone is living in their own personal dream, remember? Their own movie. A world constructed by their own unique set of agreements and beliefs.
Right.
So when someone acts or speaks, it's coming from their internal world, their programming, their book of law, not yours.
So taking something personally is basically assuming they're operating from my reality.
Or that their actions are somehow fundamentally a reflection of your worth, your being, your importance.
And the source links taking things personally directly to something it calls personal importance.
Yes, it describes personal importance as the maximum expression of selfishness.
Selfishness. Huh.
Because it's the underlying assumption that everything revolving around you is somehow about you. Me, me, me. It's a deeply ingrained habit learned during that domestication process we talked about.
Okay. And the consequence of this habit is that when someone says something negative or acts in a way we dislike, we just take it in, like swallowing poison.
You agree with what they say, especially the negative stuff. You internalize their emotional garbage, their poison, as the source puts it.
Ouch.
You feel offended, you immediately jump to defend your beliefs, you create conflict, you escalate situations, often over practically nothing substantial.
Why?
Simply because your sense of self-importance, that egoic structure, requires you to be right, to react, to defend your dream. You end up eating their emotional garbage.
But the gift of this agreement, if you can practice it, sounds immense.
It grants you immunity, like a shield. Immunity right in the middle of that dream of hell we discussed.
Immunity.
If you don't take the poison, it simply cannot affect you. Someone might try to send you their emotional garbage, their anger, their judgment, their drama. But if you don't take it personally,
It just bounces off.
it bounces off. Or maybe just stays with them. It doesn't enter your system.
And this applies not just to others' actions towards you, but even our own actions towards others, right? Like my opinions about someone, my reactions to them, those come from my internal agreements, not really from who they are.
Absolutely. That's a key point. Calling someone the best or the worst isn't some objective truth about them. It's a projection of your internal framework, your book of law, how you see the world based on your agreements.
Okay.
And the source adds an interesting twist. If someone tells you that your words are hurting them, it suggests it's not your words themselves causing the pain, but that your words have inadvertently touched their existing wounds, their pre-existing injuries from their own domestication.
So they are reacting and hurting themselves based on their personal dream and past hurts.
Exactly. You didn't cause the wound, you just poked it.
That changes things. And those strong negative reactions we have when we do take things personally, the anger, the jealousy, the sadness, where do those come from?
The sources are clear. These all stem from fear, underlying fear.
Fear.
If you can manage to live without that underlying fear, if you can operate from a place of love and self-acceptance instead, there's simply no space, no fertile ground for those heavy negative emotions to take root.
Because if you feel good about yourself,
Then the world around you tends to look good too, because you're perceiving it through the lens of your own internal state. When you don't take things personally, you're not constantly scanning for threats or insults.
it's even suggested, I think, that the opinions you have about yourself shouldn't always be taken personally either.
That's right, because those inner voices, that internal critic, it's often just part of the mypote, remember? That chaotic internal dialogue, just echoing old programming, old lies.
So you have a choice.
You have the agency to choose whether to believe those critical thoughts or not. You don't have to take them personally either.
And the source points out that humans seem almost, well, addicted to suffering. And we constantly reinforce this addiction in each other.
It does seem that way sometimes, doesn't it?
Yep.
And taking things personally is a primary way we feed that cycle, both in ourselves and in others. We get hooked on the drama.
So how do we break free?
The path involves realizing you only need to trust one person to make responsible choices for your life.
Yourself.
Just yourself. You are responsible for yourself, your actions, your reactions, your dream. You are not responsible for how others react or what they choose to do or say.
That realization must make you far less vulnerable.
It does. Less vulnerable to being hurt by the carelessness, the projections, the emotional garbage of others.
So the outcome of truly living this agreement, don't take anything. Personally, it sounds genuinely transformative.
It really is. The source claims it helps you avoid countless upsets. Anger, jealousy, envy, sadness. They begin to dissolve because their fuel source is cut off.
You get that
You
immunity.
get immunity to negative spells, both internal and external. It gives you immense freedom. It allows you to walk through the world with an open heart, without needing constant armor because you're not bracing for personal attacks anymore.
You can follow your heart.
Your intuition. Without being constantly swayed or derailed by others' reactions or opinions.
And the source mentions something about combining the first two agreements being particularly powerful.
Yes, very powerful. They estimate, and it's just an estimate, of course, but they suggest that mastering just the first two agreements, impeccability with the word and not taking things personally, can break something like 75% of the smaller, fear-based agreements that keep you trapped in that personal dream of hell.
75% with just two agreements.
That's the claim. It shows their foundational importance. It's such a vital step that they even suggest, writing "don't take anything personally" down and putting it somewhere visible, like on your fridge, as a constant reminder.
Wow, okay. 75% with just two. That's incredible leverage against the old programming. What's the third key agreement?
Third agreement, don't make assumptions.
Don't make assumptions.
Okay, the source identifies this as another major source of suffering in our lives and relationships.
Because we seem to have this almost inherent tendency to make assumptions about, well, pretty much everything.
We really do. We're constantly filling in the blanks. And the real problem isn't just making the assumption itself.
What is it then?
It's that we immediately jump to believing our assumption is the absolute truth. We don't question it, we just run with it.
Which naturally leads to a whole mess of problems, I imagine.
Exactly. You make an assumption about what someone meant or why they did something, then you take it personally. Agreement 2. You get offended, you maybe blame them, you react, often with emotional poison spread through gossip, violating agreement 1.
It all connects.
It all connects. You create drama, sometimes huge drama, out of thin air, all based entirely on a story you just made up in your head. The source states pretty bluntly that much of the sadness and drama in our lives is rooted in making assumptions and then taking the results personally.
Okay, so if it causes so much grief, why is it such a persistent habit? Why do we do it?
The source points to several reasons. A big one is, again, fear. The fear of asking questions.
Fear of looking stupid, maybe, or vulnerable.
Exactly. Fear of vulnerability, fear of clarifying. We also make assumptions because we kind of expect others, especially those we love, should just know what we want or feel because, well, they love us, right?
Mind-reading assumption.
Yeah, the mind-reading assumption. We also make assumptions to feel safe, maybe, to try and fill in the blanks and create a sense of certainty, even if it's false. We replace genuine communication with our own made-up narratives because it feels easier or safer in the moment.
And that ties right back to the mitote concept, that mental fog or chaos.
It absolutely does. The mitote is the perfect breeding ground for assumptions. It creates so much internal noise and confusion that we naturally misinterpret, we misunderstand.
We hear what we want to hear, or what we fear hearing.
Both. We see and hear what fits our existing beliefs or fears. We literally dream things up in our imagination. The source gives that very relatable example.
The mall example.
Yeah, you see someone you're attracted to across the way, maybe they smile vaguely in your direction, and instantly in your mind, you construct this entire fantasy relationship.
Been there.
All based on that single, simple interaction. That's assumption running wild.
And there's one particular assumption the sources highlight as being especially damaging, isn't there?
Yes, the biggest assumption of all, they say, is that everyone else in the world sees life, thinks, feels, judges, and yes, abuses others in the exact same way we do. This is the root of our fear of being ourselves around others. We assume they will judge us with the same harshness, the same criticism as our own internal judge does, so we hide.
And we even make assumptions about ourselves, which must fuel inner conflict.
Definitely. Overestimating or underestimating our own abilities based on those internal stories, those assumptions we've bought into. The source emphasizes the need to turn that questioning inward, too.
Ask ourselves questions.
Yes, stop lying to ourselves about what we truly desire or feel. Challenge our own assumptions about our limitations or potential.
And in relationships, this plays out constantly. The source mentions assuming love will change someone.
Oh, yeah. Justifying liking someone, maybe denying the things you dislike about them, assuming your love is so powerful, it will magically transform them into who you want them to be.
Which is false.
Completely false, according to the source. Your love won't change anyone. They change if they decide to change, for their own reasons. Making that assumption inevitably leads to immense hurt and disappointment down the line.
And then blaming them?
blaming them for the consequences of your initial assumption and choice.
So the solution offered for this pervasive habit seems pretty straightforward, though maybe not easy. Clear communication.
Yes. Be clear. Be what you are. Be clear about who you are and what you need. The source uses a very powerful, direct example, something like,
If you love me as I am, okay. If not, bye-bye.
exactly. It sounds stark, maybe, but the underlying point is to make the agreements in your relationships explicit and impeccable. State your truth clearly. Ask for clarification instead of guessing. Don't leave that murky space where assumptions can fester and grow.
Just imagine the radical impact if we all stopped making assumptions and actually committed to clear communication in our relationships, our workplaces, everywhere.
Communication would be utterly transformed. Relationships would fundamentally improve, becoming so much cleaner. Everything would become clearer because you would prioritize asking questions over inventing stories in your head.
And this brings us full circle, doesn't it? Right back to the first agreement.
It does. Clear and honest communication is the essence of making your word impeccable.
Right.
And the source makes another one of those sweeping, almost breathtaking statements here. If all of humanity could communicate clearly, with true impeccability of the word, based on truth and respect,
Yeah.
there would be no wars, no violence, no misunderstandings on a global scale. They suggest that potentially all human problems could be resolved simply by mastering these two agreements together. Impeccable word and no assumptions.
That's a staggering vision, but it sounds incredibly difficult. Breaking that lifelong habit of making assumptions feels huge.
It is difficult, no doubt. It's so deeply ingrained in how we operate. But the source stresses that awareness is the crucial first step, just noticing when you're doing it, catching yourself in the act.
Okay, awareness first.
And then the key is action and repetition, consciously choosing again and again to ask questions instead of assuming, practicing clear communication even when it feels awkward or vulnerable at first. This strengthens your will and makes the new habit easier over time.
So, by stopping assumptions, we're actively shifting how we use our word. We're moving away from using it unintentionally for creating drama and misunderstanding, that black magic,
Right.
and instead using it consciously for creation, for clarity, connection, and love. That's the white magic.
You transform your personal dream by doing this. And when you transform your dream by adopting these agreements, the sources say something quite remarkable happens.
What's that?
Magic enters your life. Real magic. Your needs start being met more easily, almost effortlessly sometimes. Your spirit feels free to move, unburdened by the old limitations.
That sounds amazing.
This is described as achieving the mastery of intent, or the mastery of spirit, or love, or gratitude. Ultimately, the mastery of life itself. It's the ultimate goal, the destination offered by this Toltec path.
Okay, so we have be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, and don't make assumptions. These three seem absolutely foundational for dismantling that old dream of hell. What's the fourth agreement, and how does it make the others stick?
The fourth agreement. Always do your best.
Always do your best.
And this agreement is really about putting the other three into action consistently. It's the one that solidifies the others and helps make them into deeply ingrained habits rather than just nice ideas. It's the action component.
The core concept seems simple enough on the surface. Do your best under any circumstance, no more and no less.
Right, but the subtlety, the real wisdom, is in recognizing that your best is not a fixed point. It's not static. It's incredibly dynamic.
How so?
It's constantly changing based on, well, everything. Your energy levels, your health, your mood, the time of day, whether you slept well. Your best when you're feeling fantastic, well-rested, and happy will be significantly different from your best when you're tired or sick or stressed.
So it fluctuates moment to moment.
Moment to moment, day to day. And ideally, your overall best improves over time as you practice these agreements and gain more personal power. But you only ever judge it based on this moment.
The no more and no less part is interesting. Why not always strive for more than your best? Isn't that how we improve?
Well, the source explains that trying to do more than your absolute best, right here, right now, is actually self-defeating.
How?
It depletes your energy unnecessarily. It makes your actual best, which might be perfectly fine for the moment, feel insufficient. It actually goes against yourself, violating impeccability.
Yeah.
And ironically, it can make it take longer to achieve your goals because you burn out or create internal resistance.
Okay. And doing less than your best.
That leaves you with that familiar baggage we talked about. Frustration, self-judgment, guilt, regrets. I should have tried harder. If only I'd done more.
Yeah, that judge pipes up again.
Exactly.
Right.
But the payoff for consistently doing your best, whatever that looks like in the moment, is immense.
What is it?
If you are always genuinely doing your best, the best you're capable of, in that specific moment, you simply cannot judge yourself fairly. There's no basis for it. You did the most you were capable of.
Ah, I see.
And when there's no basis for judgment, there's no guilt, no blame, no self-punishment. This agreement helps break that powerful spell of self-abuse driven by the judge and the victim. It cuts them off at the knees.
The source uses that story of the man meditating to illustrate this point, doesn't it? About the effort versus the state of being.
Yes, the Zen master's story. The man asks the master how long it will take to transcend if he meditates 4 hours a day. The master says 10 years.
Okay.
The man, wanting to speed it up, asks, what if I meditate 8 hours a day? The master replies, then it will take you 20 years.
Longer? Why?
Because the point isn't about the amount of time or the struggle or forcing it. It's about the quality of the action and your state of being while doing it. Do your best. Maybe meditate for 2 hours and genuinely enjoy it. Be present. Live your life fully the rest of the time.
Right.
If you spend 8 hours meditating but you're exhausted, miserable, forcing yourself, you've missed the entire point.
Yeah.
You're doing more than your best, and it's counterproductive.
So it's really about finding joy and presence in the action itself, rather than being totally fixated on the outcome or the reward.
Exactly that. Doing your best is taking action because you love it or because it's aligned with your truth. It's living intensely, being productive in a way that feels authentic, and crucially, being good to yourself in the process.
And inaction.
Inaction, conversely, is seen as denying life itself, like the example of sitting passively in front of the TV for years because you're afraid to take action, afraid to express your creative energy, afraid to live. Action is the expression of what you are.
The Forrest Gump example from the source fits here too.
It's a great example. He wasn't intellectually brilliant, maybe, but he acted. He constantly took action. He did his best in whatever he happened to be doing, whether running or playing ping pong or shrimping. He lived intensely.
And he was rewarded.
He was rewarded abundantly without ever really expecting it or striving for it in that grasping way. He just did his best in the action itself.
And doing your best is also the mechanism for learning and growth, right? You can't improve without action.
Absolutely. It's about practice. You do your best, you observe the result, even if it looks like a mistake from the outside. You learn from it without judgment. You look honestly at what happened, and you keep practicing, doing your best each time. Action makes the master, as they say. Repetition.
The source also connects doing your best to how we treat our physical bodies, which is interesting.
Yes, it suggests elevating everyday self-care rituals, like showering or eating, into a kind of puja, a sacred offering, a communion with the divine, or with life itself.
Treating your body with love?
Treating your body with love and respect, honoring its needs by doing your best to care for it. This is seen as a way of planting seeds of love in your own mind.
How does that work?
As those seeds of honoring your body gray, your self-love, your self-honor, and your respect for your physical being deepen immensely, it changes your relationship with yourself on a fundamental level.
So honoring this fourth agreement, always do your best, it means honoring life itself. Honoring what the source calls God, perhaps, with every action, every thought, every emotion, every belief.
That's the implication. It means living your personal dream without that constant draining presence of judgments, victimization, gossip, and self-abuse. It's about bringing conscious, loving action to every moment.
And when you make the commitment, the real commitment, to honor all four agreements together, what happens then?
The source makes a very powerful promise here. It says there is simply no way you will live in that dream of hell anymore. It becomes impossible.
Impossible.
You gain, essentially, 100% control over your own life and your experience of it. You take the reins back from the judge and the victim and the old programming. This is what's called the mastery of transformation.
Mastery of transformation.
Consciously transforming the collective dream you were programmed into and your personal reflection of it into your own intentional dream of heaven, your creation.
But let's be real, the source is very realistic about the difficulty involved, right?
Like,
It's not presented as a walk in the park.
oh, not at all. It's acknowledged as being very challenging. It requires strong will, real discipline, because the journey is full of obstacles. Our old habits are incredibly strong. Our addiction to suffering, because weirdly, it's familiar and feels safe in a way, is powerful. The strength of those old fear-based agreements, they constantly challenge our commitment to this new way of being.
We're attached to the judge and victim,
Deeply attached. They become part of our learned identity. Letting them go can feel like losing a part of ourselves, even if that part causes immense pain.
So knowing you're going to falter, knowing you'll slip up and break the agreement sometimes, what's the advice from the source? How do you handle that?
The crucial instruction, maybe the most compassionate part, is this. If you fall, and you will fall, do not judge yourself for it.
Don't beat yourself up.
Absolutely not. Do not allow the judge and victim to capitalize on the stumble and pull you back down into guilt and shame. Be tough with yourself in the sense of maintaining discipline, but never judgment.
So what do?
You simply stand up, dust yourself off, forgive yourself for the lapse, and start again, right away. Recommit to keeping the agreements just for today.
Just for today?
That makes it manageable. The source emphasizes again and again that repetition is key. Practice, practice, practice. The more you practice, the easier it becomes. The new neural pathways get stronger.
So doing your best today, right now, in this present moment, that's the real starting point for creating that new dream.
That's exactly it. It always begins now.
Okay. So we've journeyed through this incredibly insightful Toltec wisdom. We've explored how we get programmed, essentially, into a fear-based dream of hell. Through that process of childhood domestication, internalizing what the source calls a parasite, that system of the judge and the victim, fueled by our own fear and suffering.
Right. A parasite feeding on negative emotions.
Yeah.
And we've seen how the 4 agreements: be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best, are presented as these really powerful tools. A practical path to break free from those old limiting agreements. They offer a way to heal the emotional wounds through forgiveness, to fully inhabit the present moment, and to consciously begin creating a new dream. A dream of heaven on earth, of personal freedom.
And the resounding message, it seems, from all the sources is that the power to change your dream, it doesn't come from changing external circumstances, does it?
No, not fundamentally. It resides entirely within you.
Within me, within the listener.
Within you, in the agreements you choose to make with yourself, and in the consistent application, the practice of these principles in your daily life.
It requires, as the source mentions, a warrior's discipline, conscious action, and a lot of forgiveness for ourselves and others.
It does. It brings us right back to that initial idea of the smoky mirror, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You are, at your core, pure light, capable of immense love and creation. The smoke, the dream you were taught, that's the illusion.
So the final thought for the listener, then.
If your personal dream is ultimately your own creation and you have the inherent power right now to manifest either a personal hell or a personal heaven, what choice are you making today, right now, with your word, with your reactions, with your assumptions, and with your actions?